Warning, this is a highly edited video, meaning it has taken tens of hours of the following: writing scripts, editing, making designs, animations, and a whole damn afternoon in Paragon's replay system. If you enjoyed the video at all, finding it informative or entertaining, liking, subscribing, and sharing the content I so passionately make means a lot. Thank you, and enjoy. Gideon is a high mobility, long range damage poking caster, with his ultimate now being a great CC tool to help your team win in a team fight. This video was done with patch version 44 in mind, but even with small changes happening to his kit, the overall video will still be fantastic. So let's get into his abilities. First up, his new ability, Void Breach. Gideon summons a comet projectile that pierces minions and deals ability damage. This now takes the crown of Cosmic Rift as Gideon's highest damage ability. It is a great poking tool and amazing wave clear too. Remember, this pierces through minions, so can go through a whole wave and still hit a hero. It will take a while to get used to and does remind me of Harry's rocket, the way you have to aim a little bit ahead of where your opponent will be going, and also the range on it too. This will take a bit of trial and error, but after a few games you'll be a natural at it. Not only is this Gideon's biggest damage ability, but the power scaling is significant too, being at 3.55 power scaling. This is fantastic. If you want to build power, this ability is for you. And with quite a low cooldown, but a heavy mana cost, is one of those things you do want to be careful on using and not spamming, especially early game. Now his next ability is the good old classic Cosmic Rift. Gideon rips a meteor from the sky and deals ability damage, and applies a max movement speed slow to enemies for 2 seconds. The movement slow and damage depends on the level this ability has been upgraded to. The cooldown is 8 seconds and has a lower power scaling than Void Breach at 1.88 power scaling. However, the mana cost is identical to Void Breach. With the radius of this ability being increased, it's a lot easier to poke enemies, but does do a less damage. The slow itself isn't too significant, and even late game I don't really see a big advantage. There's not much to help Gideon catch up opponents, because with his torn space, which we'll get to in just a second, he can catch up opponents without much of a problem, but it's more there to help your allies able to catch up opponents to finish them off. So the max movement speed slow isn't too significant, it's a nice touch and is a lot easier ability to hit than Void Breach, so it definitely should be weaker. Then on to Gideon's final ability, Torn Space. Gideon opens a portal allowing him to quickly teleport certain units away depending how much Torn Space is upgraded. Friendly heroes can also follow Gideon through Torn Space by jumping into it, so it definitely can be a team ability too, not just for personal use. The cooldown is rather decent and the mana cost stays the same throughout while you upgrade the ability. So this ability has stayed the same when Gideon got his rework. It has a bit longer range and has a little shorter cooldown over the levels. Like before, it's great for mobility and get into the right position to use your ultimate. Speaking about Gideon's ultimate, Black Hole mostly stays the same, but it does have a few slight changes. Gideon rises up, creating a black hole that applies a stun and slowly moves enemies towards the centre. It does do ability damage over a whole 3.5 seconds. This of course is a channeled ability, which means it can be interrupted by hard crowd control abilities like a silence and a stun. The cooldown has been increased too to quite a significant amount, roughly the same as Decker's Containment Field, and the power scaling is pretty decent, but the one thing you do have to watch out for also is the mana cost. At level 3 it does cost a whole 280 mana, something you may not consciously think about, but after a few times of failing to use your black hole because you lack the mana, you definitely need to watch out for it. His ultimate, to balance it now it has a stun, means it does a lot less damage to almost nothing throughout the entire game. I would never focus any cards on increasing the damage over time with Gideon's ultimate, because that's not the main use of it anymore, and players need to get used to that. The massive mana and cooldown, so use it wisely. It does have a decent power scaling though, so if you are going for more power build, Black Hole and Void Breach will definitely be increased on the power department. The biggest risk, as it was always with Gideon's ultimate, is beware of enemy crowd control, though as if stunned out of your ultimate you're pretty much dead, so you have to combo your ultimate with your allies. Still, ulting 3 people by yourself will do absolutely nothing, and the amount of times I've seen a Gideon do it and fail is too much. This ultimate isn't about the damage whatsoever anymore, but the utility it can give your team in a team fight. However, purify cards won't work while you're stunned. This part may be tweaked from the ultimate, where you may have a small amount of time to purify yourself from the ultimate, but that's not implemented right now, but maybe in the future, so be aware of that. So now we've covered all of the abilities, let's get into the meat of the guide. For leveling up your abilities, I would always focus on Void Breach first. It's better poke if you can aim it well, better mana clear, and the damage itself is fantastic against the enemy mid laner. Also, something to note, it does still have the same mana cost as Cosmic Rift, so you might as well. As Cosmic Rift early game may be easier to poke, so if you do struggle using Void Breach, you may want to upgrade Cosmic Rift first, but the slow itself, especially early game where you and the opponent mid laner will be staying in that mid lane role, the slow really isn't going to do a significant much for you. I would upgrade that, then Cosmic Rift when you can, and of course you want to unlock Taunt Space within the first 2 levels just in case of an early Gamp, so you can escape it to the safety of your tower. Now the biggest thing I've realised with Gideon's rework is how to combo your 2 meteors, which goes first for example. This is tricky and there's really no right or wrong answer, but in a situation you are able to get the kill, I will use Cosmic Rift first to slow them down, then use Void Breach to deal the big damage. Having them slowed makes it easier to line up Void Breach, as at closer range it can be rather awkward, and just getting a bit more time and precision can be the big difference between dealing 500 damage and dealing 0. Something that took me a while to realise also with this is that you can spam these 2 abilities almost instantaneously between each other. You don't have to wait a second or 2, you can spam one and spam the other one right after, meaning Gideon does have insane burst damage, which the enemy team will realise very quickly once you start killing them in a second. As I mentioned earlier, the damage is now shared between these 2 meteor abilities. It's not all about Cosmic Rift anymore, but Void Breach does add that extra balance to Gideon's kit to make it more fun and compelling in my opinion. Now let's discuss his ultimate in a bit more detail, talking about the cards and heroes you may need to be afraid of. Of course, any hero that has any CC, mainly ranged heroes like a Decker or a Richter, ones that you won't be as much pulling in the middle. For example, a Narbash or Rampage are going to be more at the front line, so you won't have to worry about as them being to the side of the team fight so you can't ult them. Remember, Gideon's ultimate is all about utility, happening in a team fight, creating a team fight, initiating a team fight. You don't want to use it by yourself, and if the enemy team can continuously counter your ultimate, you're going to be significantly weaker in team fights, and that's all down to knowledge. Every time you ult, you have to think, who will you be ulting, and do they have any hard CC left? Also, looking at the card aspect of it, you do have to keep looking at cards and what cards can actually counter your ultimate. The most common one I think you're going to see will be Sleeper Agent. It has a longer range, so they don't have to get close enough to be in your ultimate to be stunned, so they can silence you right out of your ultimate and make you more vulnerable for 6 seconds, which pretty much means you're going to be instantly dead. That's definitely the biggest card you have to be worried about. There are a few other small cards that may be a problem, but with Black Hole being an instant stun right now, any Purify card is pretty pointless against the ultimate. Now, talking about Gideon overall, is there any specific cards I would recommend on him? Personally, even though he's a bit more of a unique caster now, he pretty much follows the same route as the most casters do. Something I would note is you don't want to focus too much on the damage of his ultimate, so cards that benefit damage over time abilities or gems that do the same won't be as beneficial to you in my opinion. I would rather focus heavily on boosting the damage of Void Breach and Cosmic Rift, and just use your ultimate whenever you need to in a team fight. Don't worry about it doing any damage whatsoever. That's not the perk of that ultimate anymore. So finally, let's talk about the pros and cons. Gideon has a fantastic high damage poke, there's no doubt about it, maybe even the highest damage poke / bursting abilities in the game. Not only that, but he has fantastic mobility to help him move around the Monolith map, and has a lot more verticality than it used to with the graphics update that happened a few updates ago. And finally, his ultimate has great teamfight potential, and with his great mobility, this means he can be significantly deadly in team fights, and I think teams are already realising it and trying to find ways to counter his ultimate in a lot more efficient ways. Because a good Gideon ultimate, being able to ult 4 enemies, can mean a complete team wipe if your team's ready to commit to the fight, and that can be game over from the get-go. On the other hand of it, if you are against a good crowd control team that has a lot of hard crowd control and knows to space themselves away from your ultimate, I've done this multiple times as a Narbas player where I've stepped around the sides of when a Gideon is ulting, stun Gideon out of his ult and then counter it with a Narbash ultimate, means I can change the complete tide of the fight because I have the knowledge and correctness to counter the Gideon. So as a Gideon player, you have to be very much aware of that. So overall on this guide, I would say right now he is one hell of a top tier hero, even if his ultimate gets a slight nerf that may happen in version 44.3. But even if it does get small tweaks, like I said, the whole idea of this guide will still be more than solid. So finally, I love the rework. Void Breach and Cosmic Rift combo is so satisfying to use, especially if you can get the beautiful Void Breach off to finish someone off right at the longest range it can be possible. That is amazing, so I give Epic thumbs up. Good job there on that, and I'm looking forward to see a lot more casting reworks like Harry and Gadget in the future. So thank you all very much for watching this video, and like I said at the start, this is a highly edited video as you probably watched, so if you found it entertaining or informative whatsoever, subscribing, liking and sharing my content around to other fellow Paragoners is highly appreciated. So thank you all, and I'll see you next time.